Hi friends, today is Friday, March 5th, and today with Reading with Principal Rabb-Patterson, we're continuing on with 50 Amazing Women Who Changed the World by Laura Calkhoven, illustrated by Patricia Castelao. All right, today we're going to read about Harriet Tubman and Emily Dickinson. Harriet Tubman, freedom fighter. Fact file, born around 1822 in Dorchester Country, Maryland. Spouse, John Tubman from 1844 to 1867, and Nelson Davis from 1869 to 1888. Children, none. Died March 10, 1913 in Auburn, New York. Harriet Tubman was born a slave in late February or early March of 1820 or 1822. She soon became a babysitter for her younger siblings. When she was just 5 or 6, she was taken away from her mother and hired out to be by a nearby slave master. As a slave, Harriet was often beaten and nearly died more than once, but she still believed she could be free. Her brothers were too afraid to run away with her, so one dark night in 1849, she crept into the woods alone. She hid in swamps and forests as she traveled north and trusted strangers who could have turned her over to slave catchers. Days later, she crossed the borders into Pennsylvania and was finally free. But having her freedom wasn't enough for Harriet. She wanted her family to be free too. She worked hard, saved her money, and made many trips back to the South to bring her family and other slaves to freedom. And when the Civil War broke out, she became a spy and scout for the Union Army. No one knows for sure how many slaves Harriet helped. Her work was too dangerous and had to be kept secret. But many years later, she said, "I was the conductor on the Underground Railroad for 8 years, and I can say what most conductors can't say. I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." Harriet died in 1913 and was buried with full military honors. In 2015, she was the first choice of online voters to be the woman to replace Andrew Jackson as the face on the $20 bill. Perhaps one day soon we'll see a woman like Harriet on our money. A nearly deadly blow. One night in 1836, Harriet was trying to stand up for another slave when a white boss broke her skull with a heavy weight. Harriet was forced to work in the fields with blood pouring down her face. Somehow she lived, but she had terrible headaches for the rest of her life. Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad wasn't an underground, and it wasn't actually a railroad. It was a secret network of whites and free blacks that helped runaway slaves travel to freedom. Guides called themselves conductors. Harriet Tubman was the most famous and most successful conductor on the Underground Railroad. And that, friends, is Harriet Tubman. Next, we read about Emily Dickinson, poet, fact file. Born December 10, 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts. Spouse, never married. Children, none. Died May 15, 1886 in Amherst, Massachusetts. Emily Dickinson, perhaps the greatest American poet, led a quiet life in Amherst, Massachusetts. Like other girls, she learned how to take care of a house and a garden. She also played the piano and loved reading and taking long walks. When she was 15, Emily spent just 1 year away from home at a college called Mount Holyoke Female Seminary, now Mount Holyoke College. She soon returned home to Amherst, where she most liked to be. Her younger sister, Lavinia, and her sister-in-law, Susan, were her closest friends. When Emily was in her 20s, she began writing more. When she wasn't in her garden or writing poetry, Emily took long walks in the hills around Amherst, always alone. But by the late 1860s, she stopped leaving the house and garden altogether. Not one of Emily's poems was published during her lifetime. After she died, her family discovered 40 handmade books of almost 1,800 poems. 4 years later, her first book of poetry was published. It was a huge success, and she remains one of America's most beloved writers. Green Thumb. Emily's love of gardening may have started with a school project when she created her herbarium, or collection of plants. She wrote to a friend, "Have you made an herbarium yet? I hope you will. If you have not, it would be such a treasure to you." She tended to the herbarium for the rest of her life. And that was Emily Dickinson. Hopefully you enjoyed learning about Harriet Tubman and Emily Dickinson. Have a good evening, friends.